Ella, tiny on stage, asks Marshall about God, shaking the entire concert. Will they reunite hit like subscribe and ring the bell for the latest videos? The concert roared like a living beast, lights slashing through the haze, bass thumping in the chests of thousands packed into the city's open-air arena. Marshall Kane, tattoos curling up his neck, gripped the mic, his voice a blade cutting through the crowd's screams. At 32, he was a rap legend, his name synonymous with grit and glory. Midway through his set, he paused, sweat gleaming, and pointed to the crowd. "Who's got a question for me?" Hands shot up, voices clamoring, but his eyes landed on a small figure near the front, a black girl, maybe 8, her braids tight, her frame dwarfed by the chaos. Security lifted her onto the stage, the crowd cheering. Marshall crouched, grinning. "What's your name?" "Kid Ella," she said, her voice soft but clear, clutching a worn cross necklace. The mic trembled in her hand, but her eyes locked on his, unyielding. "Go on, ask me anything," he said, expecting a question about fame or music. The arena buzzed, phones raised to capture the moment. Ella's voice cut through, pure and piercing. "Do you believe in God?" The crowd fell silent. 1,000 breaths held. Marshall froze, his grin fading, the stage lights burning into his tattooed face. The question wasn't just words, it was a mirror, reflecting a past he'd buried. His mind flashed to Naya, a girl he'd loved and left a decade ago, her faith unshakable even in poverty. He'd signed away their child for a record deal, a choice that haunted his sleepless nights. Elfa's necklace glinted, a cross identical to Naya's, and his eyes stared back. The crowd murmured, sensing the shift, but Marshall couldn't speak. Ella handed the mic back, her face unreadable, and slipped off the stage, vanishing into the sea of bodies. The DJ restarted the beat, but Marshall's heart pounded louder. "Hold up," he shouted, dropping the mic, and bolted after her, shoving past security. The crowd surged, phones flashing, screams rising as he leaped off the stage, landing hard on the concrete. Ella was a shadow, weaving through the K, her small frame darting toward an exit. Marshall sprinted, dodging fans clawing at him, his chain bouncing against his chest. "Ella," he yelled, but the noise swallowed his voice. A group of teens blocked her path, drunk and rowdy, one grabbing her arm. "Where are you going, kid?" he slurred, laughing. Ella twisted free, her necklace catching the light, but another teen shoved her, sending her stumbling into a barricade. Marshall roared, charging through, and tackled the teen, pinning him to the ground. "Back off," he snarled, fist raised. But Ella was already running, her sneakers slapping the pavement toward the street. Security swarmed, pulling Marshall back, but he broke free, his eyes locked on Ella. She slipped through a side gate, the city's neon glow swallowing her. Marshall reached the gate, panting, and spotted her ducking into an alley. He followed, the concert's roar fading behind him, replaced by the hum of traffic and distant sirens. The alley was narrow, littered with trash, and Ella stood frozen at its end, clutching her backpack, her eyes wide but defiant. "Why'd you run?" Marshall asked, slowing, his voice raw. Ella didn't answer, her hand tightening on the cross. A screech of tires cut through the night. A black van skidded to a stop at the alley's mouth, its doors flying open. 2 men in hoods jumped out, one gripping a bat, the other a knife. "Get the kid," the bat wielder barked, charging toward Ella. Marshall didn't think he dove, shoving Ella behind a dumpster, and swung his fist, catching the knife man's jaw. The man staggered, but the bat cracked across Marshall's shoulder, pain exploding. He grunted, grabbing the bat and yanking, pulling the attacker off balance. Ella screamed, scrambling to her feet, but the knife man lunged, blade flashing. Marshall tackled him, slamming him into the brick wall, the knife clattering. The van's driver revved, shouting, "Leave her, go!" The attackers bolted, piling into the van, which peeled away, tires smoking. Marshall collapsed against the dumpster, blood seeping from his shoulder, his breath ragged. Ella crouched beside him, unharmed but shaking. Her backpack spilled open. A folded paper lay among her things. Not there before. Marshall grabbed it, his hands trembling, and unfolded it, scrawled in sharp ink, "She's yours. Keep her safe." N. His heart stopped. Naya's initial. But Nia was dead, wasn't she? He looked at Ella, her cross necklace glinting, her eyes searching his face. "You knew me," he whispered, the truth crashing in. Ella nodded, barely audible. "Mama said you're lost." Marshall's throat tightened, guilt and fear choking him. He pulled her close, shielding her as sirens grew louder. Across the street, a figure watched from the shadows, his hoodie hiding a crescent moon tattoo on his wrist. He slipped away, unnoticed. As police lights flashed, back at the concert, the crowd buzzed, videos of Marshall's chase going viral, captioned with hashtags like Rap King Meltdown. Marshall ignored his phone, buzzing with calls from his manager, Vince, who'd pushed him to bury Nia's memory. He lifted Ella's backpack, finding a crumpled photo inside Nia holding a baby, her smile unbroken despite the pain. Marshall's eyes burned. "I'm not lost anymore," he said, his voice breaking. Ella's hand brushed his, small but steady, and they stepped into the street, the city's pulse matching their own. The van's tire tracks lingered in the alley, a warning of enemies circling. Marshall's grip on the note tightened. Someone knew his secret, and they weren't done. The concert roared like a living beast, lights slashing through the haze, bass thumping in the chests of thousands packed into the city's open-air arena. Marshall Kane, tattoos curling up his neck, gripped the mic, his voice a blade cutting through the crowd's screams. At 32, he was a rap legend, his name synonymous with grit and glory. Midway through his set, he paused, sweat gleaming, and pointed to the crowd. "Who's got a question for me?" Hands shot up, voices clamoring, but his eyes landed on a small figure near the front, a black girl, maybe 8. Her braids tight, her frame dwarfed by the chaos. Security lifted her onto the stage, the crowd cheering. Marshall crouched, grinning. "What's your name?" "Kid Ella," she said, her voice soft but clear, clutching a worn cross necklace. The mic trembled in her hand, but her eyes locked on his, unyielding. "Go on, ask me anything," he said, expecting a question about fame or music. The arena buzzed, phones raised to capture the moment. Ella's voice cut through, pure and piercing. "Do you believe in God?" The crowd fell silent. 1,000 breaths held. Marshall froze, his grin fading, the stage lights burning into his tattooed face. The question wasn't just words, it was a mirror, reflecting a past he'd buried. His mind flashed to Naya, a girl he'd loved and left a decade ago, her faith unshakable even in poverty. He'd signed away their child for a record deal, a choice that haunted his sleepless nights. Ella's necklace glinted, a cross identical to Nia's. In his eyes stared back. The crowd murmured, sensing the shift, but Marshall couldn't speak. Ella handed the mic back, her face unreadable, and slipped off the stage, vanishing into the sea of bodies. The DJ restarted the beat, but Marshall's heart pounded louder. "Hold up," he shouted, dropping the mic, and bolted after her, shoving past security. The crowd surged, phones flashing, screams rising as he leaped off the stage. Landing hard on the concrete, Ella was a shadow, weaving through the chaos, her small frame darting toward an exit. Marshall sprinted, dodging fans clawing at him, his chain bouncing against his chest. "Ella," he yelled, but the noise swallowed his voice. A group of teens blocked her path, drunk and rowdy, one grabbing her arm. "Where are you going, kid?" he slurred, laughing. Ella twisted free, her necklace catching the light, but another teen shoved her, sending her stumbling into a barricade. Marshall roared, charging through, and tackled the teen, pinning him to the ground. "Back off," he snarled, fist raised. But Ella was already running, her sneakers slapping the pavement toward the street. Security swarmed, pulling Marshall back. But he broke free, his eyes locked on Ella. She slipped through a side gate, the city's neon glow swallowing her. Marshall reached the gate, panting, and spotted her ducking into an alley. He followed, the concert's roar fading behind him, replaced by the hum of traffic and distant sirens. The alley was narrow, littered with trash, and Ella stood frozen at its end, clutching her backpack, her eyes wide but defiant. "Why'd you run?" Marshall asked, slowing, his voice raw. Ella didn't answer, her hand tightening on the cross. A screech of tires cut through the night. A black van skidded to a stop at the alley's mouth, its doors flying open. Two men in hoods jumped out, one gripping a bat, the other a knife. "Get the kid," the bat wielder barked, charging toward Ella. Marshall didn't think he dove, shoving Ella behind a dumpster, and swung his fist, catching the knife man's jaw. The man staggered, but the bat cracked across Marshall's shoulder, pain exploding. He grunted, grabbing the bat and yanking, pulling the attacker off balance. Ella screamed, scrambling to her feet, but the knife man lunged, blade flashing. Marshall tackled him, slamming him into the brick wall, the knife clattering. The van's driver revved, shouting, "Leave her. Go." The attackers bolted, piling into the van, which peeled away, tires smoking. Marshall collapsed against the dumpster, blood seeping from his shoulder, his breath ragged. Elia crouched beside him, unharmed but shaking. Her backpack spilled open. A folded paper lay among her things. Not there before. Marshall grabbed it, his hands trembling, and unfolded it. Scrawled in sharp ink, "She's yours. Keep her safe." N. His heart stopped. Naya's initial. But Nia was dead, wasn't she? He looked at Ella, her crossed necklace glinting, her eyes searching his face. "You knew me," he whispered, the truth crashing in. Ella nodded, barely audible. "Mama said you're lost." Marshall's throat tightened, guilt and fear choking him. He pulled her close, shielding her as sirens grew louder. Across the street, a figure watched from the shadows, his hoodie hiding a crescent moon tattoo on his wrist. He slipped away, unnoticed, as police lights flashed. Back at the concert, the crowd buzzed, videos of Marshall's chase going viral, captioned with hashtags like Rap King Meltdown. Marshall ignored his phone, buzzing with calls from his manager, Vince, who'd pushed him to bury Nia's memory. He lifted Ella's backpack, finding a crumpled photo inside Nia holding a baby, her smile unbroken despite the pain. Marshall's eyes burned. "I'm not lost anymore," he said, his voice breaking. Ella's hand brushed his, small but steady, and they stepped into the street, the city's pulse matching their own. The van's tire tracks lingered in the alley, a warning of enemies circling. Marshall's grip on the note tightened. Someone knew his secret, and they weren't done. The motorcycle's engine roared as Marshall Kane sped through the city's underbelly, Ella's small arms wrapped tight around his waist, her backpack pressed against his back. The note, Vince's office. Tomorrow. Truth's there, and was a live wire in his pocket, its words fueling his rage. Vince, his manager, had orchestrated the attacks, using Ella as leverage to keep Marshall silent. The crescent moon tattooed stranger had vanished, but his warning about Hope House being watched lingered. Marshall's shoulder ached from the alley fight, blood crusted under his torn jacket, but he didn't slow. Dawn was breaking, casting gray light over the crumbling streets near Hope House. He pulled into an abandoned lot, cutting the engine. Ella slid off, her cross necklace glinting, her eyes sharp despite the night's chaos. "Why are we here?" she asked, voice steady but wary. Marshall knelt, meeting her gaze. I need to know you're safe. Ella, Vince's people are after us. I'm checking the church first. She nodded, clutching her backpack, the photo of Naya inside a fragile anchor. Marshall scanned the lot, spotting a rusted gate leading to Hope House's rear. Stay close, he said, leading her through. The church's courtyard was quiet, too quiet, the cross above the door looming like a sentinel. Marshall's gut twisted, something was off. He signaled Ella to wait behind a hedge, then crept toward a side window, peering into the dorms. Sister Ruth's office light flickered, paper strewn across her desk. A shadow moved inside, not Ruth, but a man in a black cap, rifling through files. Marshall's jaw clenched. Vince's men were already here. He motioned Ella to stay low and slipped through a cracked window, landing silently in a hallway. The air smelled of candle wax and fear. He edged toward Ruth's office, where the man muttered into a radio, no sign of the kid. Check the streets. Marshall lunged, locking the man's arm and slamming him against the wall. Where's Vince? He growled. The man smirked, spitting blood. You're dead. Kane. A boot scuffed behind another thug. Bat raised. Marshall ducked, the bat splintering the doorframe, and tackled the second man. Fists flying, papers scattered, a file labeled Ella hitting the floor. Ella, watching from the window, gasped, then darted inside, grabbing the file. Her hand shook as she stuffed it into her backpack, but her eyes caught a glint, a USB drive taped under Ruth's desk. She yanked it free, heart racing, and slipped back out, unnoticed. Marshall knocked out the second thug, binding both with electrical tape, but headlights flared outside a black van, like the one from the alley, screeching into the courtyard. Ella, he shouted, sprinting out. She was already running, her small frame weaving through the church's garden. The van's doors flew open, 3 men spilling out, one with a crescent moon tattoo on his wrist, the same stranger from last night. Get her, he barked, drawing a knife. Marshall dove, shoving Ella behind a stone bench, and swung his chain, catching the knife man's wrist. The blade clattered, but the other 2 charged, one swinging a pipe. Marshall took a hit to the ribs, grunting, but grabbed the pipe, wrenching it free and cracking it across the man's knee. Ella scrambled up, clutching the USB, and bolted toward the street, Marshall on her heels. The tattooed man gave chase, his speed terrifying, knife gleaming. The city woke around them, horns blaring as they hit the main road. Ella darted through a crowded market, stalls packed with fruit and clothes. Marshall shoving through, ignoring the pain in his ribs. The tattooed man was relentless, knocking over crates. His eyes locked on Ella. She ducked into an alley, but it was a dead end, trash cans blocking the way. Marshall caught up, pulling her behind him, pipe raised. The tattooed man slowed, smirking. You can't run forever, Kane. Marshall's voice was ice. Why her? The man's eyes flicked to Ella's backpack. She's got something Vince wants. Before Marshall could react, a siren wailed. A police cruiser rounded the corner, spooked by the market chaos. The tattooed man cursed, vanishing into the crowd, but not before tossing a note at Ella's feet. Marshall grabbed it, his hands shaking. Vince's office. Midnight, or she dies. V. Ella's breath hitched, her fingers tight on the USB. I took this, she whispered, showing it. Marshall's eyes widened. From the church, she nodded, guilt flashing across her face. It was under the desk. He pulled her close, the market's noise fading. You're brave, kid. They slipped into a diner, the USB and note hidden in Ella's backpack. Marshall's phone buzzed, Vince demanding a meeting. He ignored it, plugging the USB into his phone. Files loaded emails, contracts, proof Vince had blackmailed Marshall into signing away Ella, threatening Naya's life if he didn't comply. One email mentioned a deal with a group called Black Crescent, tied to the tattooed man. Marshall's blood boiled. Vince wasn't just a greedy manager, he was a cog in something bigger. Ella watched him, her voice small. Did you ever love Mama? Marshall's chest ached. Yeah, I was just too weak to stay. She nodded, her cross necklace catching the diner's light. Outside, a black van cruised past, slow and deliberate. Marshall grabbed Ella's hand, the note's deadline looming. We're hitting Vince's office tonight, he said, his voice a vow. Ella's eyes met his, fierce despite her fear. Together, he nodded. Together. They slipped out the back, the city's pulse a war drum, unaware of the tattooed man watching from a rooftop, his radio crackling with Vince's orders, bring me the drive, or end them both. The diner's fluorescent lights buzzed as Marshall Kane and Ella huddled in a corner booth, the USB from Hope House and the threatening note Vince's office. Midnight. Or she dies. V, hidden in Ella's backpack. Marshall's ribs ached from the pipe hit in the market chase. His shoulder still raw from the alley fight, but his focus was razor sharp. The USB's files, glimpsed on his phone, exposed Vince's blackmail threats to Naya's life if Marshall didn't sign away Ella a decade ago, all tied to a shadowy group called Black Crescent. Ella's cross necklace glinted, her small hands clutching a soda, her eyes searching at his face. Outside, the city pulsed, unaware of the black van circling nearby. Marshall leaned in, voice low. Ella, I gotta tell you something. She tensed, sensing the weight. I loved your mama, Naya, but I was young, scared. Vince pushed me to leave you both for the fame. I signed papers to give you up. His voice cracked. I'm sorry, kid. I was weak. Ella's gaze didn't waver, but her lip trembled. Mama said you'd come back someday. Is that why you're here? Marshall nodded, guilt choking him. I'm here now. I ain't leaving you again. She reached for his hand, her touch small but firm, and for a moment, the diner's noise faded. His phone buzzed Dre, his old rapper friend. Texting concert tonight. Vince'll be there. Bring the proof. Marshall's jaw clenched. The note's midnight deadline meant Vince was planning something, but the concert was their chance to strike first. We're going, he told Ella, but you stay close. She nodded, slipping the USB deeper into her backpack. Night fell, and the concert venue, a gritty warehouse turned music hub, throbbed with bass and flashing lights. Marshall, Ella at his side, pushed through the backstage chaos, his chain bouncing, tattoos stark under the glow. Dre met them, his dreads tied back, eyes grim. Vince is in the VIP box, surrounded by muscle. Watch your back. Marshall handed Dre a copy of the USB files. Print it out. Get these to the crew. If I don't make it, leak 'em. Dre nodded, slipping away. Ella's hand tightened on Marshall's, her cross necklace catching the stage lights. I'm scared, she whispered. He knelt, meeting her eyes. You're braver than me, kid. We got this. The show began. Marshall said, igniting the crowd, but his eyes scanned the VIP box. Vince sat, smug, flanked by two men, one with a crescent moon tattoo the same from the alley and Hope House. Marshall's pulse spiked. He cut his set short, grabbing Ella and heading backstage. But a scream stopped him. Smoke curled from the sound booth. Sparks flying. Fire, someone yelled. The crowd surging, trampling barricades. Marshall pulled Ella close, dodging panicked fans. But the tattooed man appeared, knife in hand, blocking their path. The drive. Kane, he snarled. Marshall swung, fist connecting with the man's jaw. But another thug grabbed Ella, yanking her backpack. She kicked, screaming, her necklace swinging. Dre and two rappers, Ty and Lena, charged in, tackling the thug. Ella broke free, backpack intact, but the tattooed man lunged again, knife slashing Marshall's arm. Blood sprayed. But Marshall shoved him into a speaker stack, toppling it. The fire spread, flames licking the ceiling, alarms blaring. Marshall scooped Ella up, sprinting for the exit, Dre's crew clearing a path. Outside, the night air hit like a slap, fire trucks wailing. Ella coughed, clutching the USB, but Vince's voice cut through. You're done, Kane. Kane. He stood by a black van, gun raised, his guards circling. Marshall set Ella behind a dumpster, his arm bleeding, and faced Vince. You blackmailed me, hurt Nia, and now you're after my kid. Vince smirked. You were nothing without me. Hand over the drive, or she's gone. Before Marshall could move, a new figure stepped from the shadows. Father Paul, the priest from Hope House, his face stern. Enough. Vincent, he said, voice commanding. The crowd, now filming, went quiet. Vince laughed, but Paul raised a notebook. Naya's journal. She wrote about your threats, your crescent deals. I kept it safe. Marshall's eyes widened. Paul had known Naya's truth all along. Vince's smirk faltered, his gun wavering. You're bluffing, he spat. But Paul tossed the journal to Dre, who held it up. Pages open to Naya's handwriting. The crowd gasped, phones capturing every word. Ella stepped forward, her voice small but clear. You hurt Mama. You don't scare me. Vince lunged for her, but Marshall tackled him, pinning him to the pavement, the gun skidding away. Dre's crew restrained the guards. The tattooed man, already gone, vanished in the chaos. Police swarmed, cuffing Vince, who cursed as they dragged him away. Marshall pulled Ella close, blood and soot on his face. Her necklace pressed against his chest. Father Paul approached, his eyes soft. Naya knew you'd find her. Marshall, she never stopped praying for you. He handed Marshall a photo from the journal, Naya and baby Ella, smiling. Marshall's eyes burned, but he nodded, gripping Ella's hand. The fire was contained, the concert a wreck, but the crowd chanted Marshall's name, videos of Vince's downfall spreading online. Ella looked up, her voice steady. Are we safe now? Marshall shook his head. The tattooed man's escape a shadow. Not yet, but we're together. Dre pocketed the journal, promising to guard it. Paul's revelation hung heavy. Black Crescent was still out there, and Naya's journal held more secrets. Marshall lifted Ella onto his shoulders, the city's lights a battleground, but her weight a promise. They'd face the next fight as one. The city's pulse thrummed as Marshall, Kane, and Ella stood outside the wrecked concert venue, the air thick with smoke and the wail of sirens. Vince was cuffed, dragged away by police, but the shadow of Black Crescent loomed larger than ever, its crescent moon tattooed enforcer still at large. Father Paul's revelation. Naya's journal exposing Vince's threats and ties to the criminal syndicate burned in Marshall's mind. The notebook now safe with Dre. Ella's crossed necklace glinted under streetlights, her small frame steady despite the chaos, clutching her backpack with the USB of Vince's blackmail. Marshall's arm bled from the knife slash, but he ignored it, his eyes on Ella. You did good, kid, he said, voice rough. She nodded, but her gaze flicked to Paul, who stood nearby, his priest's collar stark against the night. Mama trusted you, she said to him. Paul's face softened. She trusted you'd find each other. He pulled another page from Nia's journal, handing it to Marshall. She wrote about Black Crescent's deals drugs, money, power. They're planning something big at the docks tonight. Marshall's jaw clenched. The USB and journal were dynamite, but Black Crescent wouldn't stop. We hit them first, he said, gripping the page. Ella's eyes widened. I'm coming. Marshall hesitated, but her fierce look stopped him. Together, she insisted. He nodded, pulling her close. Back at Hope House, the church's dim hall buzzed with tension. Sister Ruth, shaken by the break-in, gathered Ella's friends Mia, a wiry 10-year-old, and Jamal, a quiet teen who'd seen too much. Ella stood on a chair, her voice clear. My dad's fighting bad people. They hurt Mama. I need your help. Mia's eyes lit up. Like spies, Jamal cracked his knuckles. I'm in. Ruth frowned but didn't stop them. Paul added, Naya's journal mentions a shipment at Pier 17. Stop it. In Black Crescent Falls. Marshall, patching his arm with a bandage, called Dre and his rapper crew Ty and Lena for backup. Bring everything, he said. By midnight, Pier 17 was a labyrinth of cranes and containers, fog rolling off the water. Marshall, Ella, and the Hope House kids crouched behind a rusted crate, Dre's crew fanning out. Ella's backpack held the USB and journal page, her cross necklace tucked under her shirt. Marshall carried a tire iron, his chain bouncing, eyes scanning for the tattooed man. Ty signaled from a stack of barrels a black van, like the one from the alley, idled near a warehouse, its doors open. Men unloaded crates, one marked Crescent Imports. Paul's intel was solid. Drugs, Lena whispered, her switchblade ready. Marshall nodded, but Ella pointed to a figure by the van, the tattooed man, directing the operation. A radio in hand. That's him, she hissed. Before they could move, a spark flared. A guard lit a fuse on a crate, its label reading explosives. Marshall's heart sank. They're blowing the evidence. He signaled Dre to flank the guards, but Ella grabbed his arm. I can get closer, she said, her small size perfect for sneaking. Marshall hated it, but nodded. Stay low. Ella slipped through the shadows, weaving between containers, her sneakers silent. She reached the van, overhearing the tattooed man burn the shipment. No loose ends. She spotted a laptop in the van, its screen showing Black Crescent's accounts proof to bury them. Ella grabbed it, but a guard turned, his flashlight catching her. Hey, he shouted, lunging. Ella dodged, clutching the laptop, and bolted. Marshall sprinted out, tire irons swinging, cracking the guard's arm. The fuse sparked closer to the crate, seconds from detonation. Dre and Ty tackled two more guards, Lena's blade flashing to cut their radios. Jamal and Mia, armed with slingshots from the church, pelted the tattooed man with rocks, slowing him. Ella slid behind Marshall, the laptop safe, but the fuse hissed, flames licking the crate. Run. Marshall shouted, scooping Ella and diving behind a container as the crate exploded, shrapnel tearing through the air, the van erupting in flames. The blast rocked the dock, crates toppling, but the team ducked, unharmed. The tattooed man roared, drawing a gun, but police sirens wailed. Paul had tipped them off. Officers swarmed, guns drawn, pinning the remaining guards. The tattooed man fired, grazing Dre's shoulder, and bolted into the warehouse. Marshall chased, Ella on his heels, the laptop in her backpack. Inside, the warehouse was a maze of crates, the air thick with smoke. The tattooed man climbed a catwalk, aiming at Ella. Drop the laptop, he snarled. Marshall dove, shoving Ella behind a barrel and threw his tire iron, hitting the man's hand. The gun fell, clattering below. Ella scrambled up, tossing the laptop to Lena, who'd followed. The tattooed man leaped off the catwalk, vanishing into the fog, but not before dropping a note. You're too late. See. Marshall cursed, but the police secured the dock, seizing the remaining crates, drugs, cash, and Black Crescent's ledgers. Ella's laptop held the syndicate's financials, enough to cripple them. Back at Hope House, dawn broke as Paul bandaged Dre's shoulder, Ruth fussing over the kids. Ella sat with Marshall, the journal page open. Mama knew they'd come for us, she said, her voice steady. Marshall gripped her hand. The notes see a new threat. We stopped their deal, but they're not done. Lena pocketed the laptop, vowing to leak its data. Jamal and Mia high-fived, their slingshots heroes of the night. Paul's eyes met Marshall's. Naya's faith lives in her, he said, nodding at Ella. Marshall nodded, his chain heavy, but Ella's cross lighter than ever. The dock's embers glowed in the distance. A battle won, but Black Crescent's shadow lingered, its leader still free. The dawn light filtered through Hope House's cracked windows, casting shadows over Marshall Kane and Ella as they sat in the church's quiet common room. The laptop from the docks, packed with Black Crescent's financials, lay secure with Dre, while Naya's journal page rested on the table, its words a lifeline. Ella's cross necklace glinted, her small hands tracing its edges, her eyes heavy from the night's battle. Marshall's arm, bandaged from the concert slash, ached, but his focus was on Ella. The note from the tattooed man, "You're too late, see," burned in his pocket, a warning that Black Crescent's leader was still out there. Sister Ruth bustled in, setting down coffee, her face stern but kind. "Your trouble, Kane, but you're hers," she said, nodding at Ella. Marshall managed a half smile, but Ella's voice cut through, soft but piercing. "Why didn't you ever look for me?" The question hit like a blade, Naya's echo in it. Marshall leaned forward, his chain clinking, voice raw. "I was a coward. Ella, I thought leaving you and Naya kept you safe. Vince fed me lies, said I'd ruin you. I believed him." His eyes burned, guilt clawing. "I'm sorry, kid. I'll never leave again." Ella's gaze held his, searching, then softened. "Mama said you'd find your way." I waited. She reached out, her hands small against his tattooed knuckles, and Marshall's heart cracked open. "I'm here now," he vowed, "and I'll protect you." A knock interrupted Dre, his shoulder bandaged, holding a burner phone. "Vince's crew's talking. They're hitting your studio tonight. Want Naya's journal gone?" Marshall's jaw tightened. The studio, where he'd recorded his first tracks with Nia's voice in his head, was now a battlefield. "We set a trap," he said, standing. Ella grabbed her backpack, the USB inside. "I'm coming," Ruth protested, but Ella's fierce look silenced her. "He's my dad." Marshall nodded, pride mixing with fear. By dusk, the studio, a gritty warehouse turned recording hub, hummed with tension. Marshall, Ella, Dre, Ty, and Lena rigged the place cameras, alarms, and a hidden exit. Ella clutched Naya's journal page, her cross necklace tucked away, staying near Marshall. He handed her a walkie-talkie. "Stay sharp, kid." The plan was simple: let Black Crescent's men come, catch them on camera, and protect the journal. But Marshall's gut screamed it wouldn't be easy. Night fell, and the studio's lights flickered as a van screeched outside. Marshall signaled the crew to hide. Ella ducked behind a soundproofed booth. Dre and Ty flanked the doors, Lena at the console. The door burst open. 4 men in hoods storming in, led by the tattooed man, crescent moon knife in hand. "Find the book," he barked, tearing through equipment, mics crashing. Marshall stepped out, tire iron raised. "Looking for me." The tattooed man smirked, lunging, blade flashing. Marshall parried, metal clanging. But a second thug swung a bat, catching his ribs. He grunted, stumbling. As Dre tackled the Batman, fists flying, Lena triggered the alarms. Lights strobing, disorienting the intruders. Ella, hidden, saw a thug near the journal safe. She crept out, tossing a mic stand to trip him. But he grabbed her arm, yanking her up. "Got the kid," he shouted. Marshall roared, breaking free, and tackled the thug, freeing Ella, but taking a knife slash to his forearm. Blood sprayed, but he didn't stop, shoving Ella toward the booth. The tattooed man pulled a gun, firing at the console. Sparks flew, monitors shattering. Ty dove, wrestling a thug, but the journal page fell, skittering across the floor. Ella lunged for it, sliding under a table, but the tattooed man spotted her. Enough, he snarled, aiming at her. Marshall dove, shielding her, the bullet grazing his shoulder, pain seared. But he grabbed the journal, tossing it to Lena. Dre shouted. Cops' sirens wailed, closing in, tipped by a call from Hope House. The thugs panicked, but the tattooed man wasn't done. He yanked a folder from his jacket, tossing it into a trash can and lighting a match. Vince's orders? He hissed. Flames rising, he bolted, the others following, vanishing into the night. Marshall staggered up, dousing the fire with the jacket, and grabbed the folder, singed but intact. Ella, unharmed, clutched the journal, her eyes wide as police stormed in. Inside the folder was a single page, an accident report. Nia's name in bold hit and run. No witnesses. A handwritten margin note. In Vince's scrawl, Crescent handled it. Marshall's blood froze. Vince didn't just threaten Nia. He whispered, shaking. He killed her. Ella's breath hitched, tears brimming, but her voice fierce. He pays for Mama. Marshall pulled her close, blood dripping, the studio a wreck. Dre and Lena secured the journal and folder, Ty nursing a split lip. The police took statements, but the tattooed man's escape gnawed at Marshall. Black Crescent's leader, C, was Vince's puppet master, and Nia's death was their crime. Ella's walkie-talkie crackled a static voice, distorted. You're close. End it. N. Marshall's heart skipped. Nia's initial, but not her voice. Someone was still guiding them. He looked at Ella, her cross necklace now a beacon. We're finishing this, he said, his vow ironclad. Dre handed him a burner phone with a new lead, C's safe house. Old Mill. Tomorrow. Lena's eyes burned. We hit him hard. The crew nodded, united, but Marshall's gaze lingered on Ella. Her strength, Nia's legacy. Outside, the city's neon heartbeat, hiding a killer in its shadows. Marshall gripped the folder. Nia's murder fueling their fight. Ella's hand in his, a reason to win it. The city's neon veins pulsed as Marshall, Kane, and Ella crouched in the back of Dre's van, speeding toward the old mill. Black Crescent's supposed safe house. The singed folder revealing Nia's hit-and-run murder, ordered by Vince and executed by Black Crescent, lay heavy in Marshall's bag, alongside Nia's journal and the laptop from the docks. Ella's cross necklace glinted, her small frame tense but resolute, clutching the USB with Vince's blackmail. Marshall's forearm throbbed from the studio knife slash, his ribs bruised, but Nia's death fueled him. The mysterious voice on the walkie-talkie, you're close. End it. N echoed, its source unknown but urgent. Dre, driving, glanced back, his shoulder bandaged. Cops are ready, but this sea guy's slippery. You sure about the concert plan? Marshall nodded, his chain clinking. I go public tonight. Draw him out. Ella stays safe. Ella's eyes flashed. I'm not hiding. Marshall sighed, pride battling fear. You're my heart. Kid, I can't lose you. She squeezed his hand, her strength Nia's echo. At Hope House, they'd planned with Father Paul and Sister Ruth Marshall would confess Ella's identity at his next concert. Live streamed to millions, exposing Black Crescent's crimes with the laptop's data. The police, tipped by Dre, would stake out the mill, waiting for C, the tattooed man, to show. Lena and Ty, armed with burner phones, scouted the mill, confirming activity. The concert was hours away, but the mill was now. The van stopped a block from the mill, a crumbling relic by the river, its windows dark. Marshall, Ella, Dre, and the Hope House kids, Mia and Jamal, slipped out, sticking to shadows. Ty signaled that from a ridge 2 vans, Crescent guards, and the tattooed man, his knife gleaming. Ella whispered, he's got a case, looks important. Marshall's gut twisted. That's our target. He radioed the police, but static answered someone was jamming the signal. Dre cursed. We're on our own. Marshall handed Ella to Mia. Stay here, Ella protested, but Jamal backed him. We got her. Man, Marshall, Dre, and Ty crept closer, tire irons ready. The tattooed man barked orders, loading the case into a van. Marshall lunged, tackling a guard, his iron cracking ribs. Dre and Ty took two more, but the tattooed man spun, knife slashing, grazing Dre's arm. The case hit the ground, popping open files, cash, and a photo of Naya, marked eliminated. Marshall roared, charging the tattooed man, who fired a gun, the bullet missing but splintering a crate. Ella, watching, broke free from Mia, sprinting to the case, grabbing a file. Ella, no, Marshall shouted, diving to shield her as the tattooed man aimed again. A police chopper's spotlight blazed. Sirens screaming the signal jam was broken. The tattooed man bolted, vanishing into the mill, but guards swarmed, one snatching Ella, dragging her toward a van. Marshall chased, ignoring a bat to his back. Pain searing, he tackled the guard, freeing Ella, but the van peeled out, clipping his leg. He fell, blood pooling. Ella screaming his name. Dre and Ty pulled him up, the police arresting the guards, but the tattooed man was gone. The case secure. Ella clutched the file, tears streaming. You're hurt. Marshall grinned through the pain. Worth it for you. Hours later, the concert venue, a massive arena, throbbed with anticipation. Marshall, leg bandaged, arm in a sling, took the stage. Ella safe backstage with Paul and Ruth. The crowd roared, phones live streaming. Marshall gripped the mic, his voice raw. I got a daughter, Lola. I left her and her mama, Nia, for this life. I was wrong. Gasps rippled, cameras zooming. Nia's gone, killed by Black Crescent, a syndicate you'll hear about tonight. My manager, Vince, was their pawn. This is for them. He held up the laptop, its data leaked by Elena flashing on screens. Black Crescent's deals. Nia's murder, Vince's blackmail. The crowd erupted, chanting Ella's name. Backstage, Ella watched, her cross necklace gleaming, pride in her eyes. But a scream cut through Mia, pointing to a side exit. The tattooed man, hooded, grabbed Ella, knife at her throat. Quiet, or you're dead, he hissed, dragging her to a service tunnel. Marshall, mid-speech, saw the commotion, dropping the mic and sprinting off stage. Dre and Ty behind. The tunnel was a maze, pipes dripping, lights flickering. Marshall's legs screamed, but he pushed on, hearing Ella's muffled cries. He rounded a corner, finding the tattooed man shoving Ella into a car outside. Stop, Marshall roared, lunging, but the man slashed, cutting his chest. Blood soaked his shirt. But Marshall grabbed the knife arm, twisting until it snapped. The man howling. Ella broke free, kicking the man's knee, and Marshall pinned him, fists pummeling until Dre pulled him off. Police swarmed, cuffing the man, revealed as C. Caleb, Vince's enforcer. Ella threw her arms around Marshall, sobbing, his blood staining her jacket. You didn't give up, she whispered. He held her, vision blurring, pain fading in her embrace. The concert crowd, watching the chase on screens, cheered. The live stream viral. Caleb's case held Black Crescent's final ledgers, enough to dismantle them. Marshall rushed to a medic, refused a stretcher, limping back to Ella. We did it, he rasped, her cross against his heart. Paul appeared, journal in hand. Nia's proud. The city's lights burned, Black Crescent's shadow shrinking. But Marshall knew the cost: his blood, Ella's courage, Nia's life. They'd won, but he'd never stop fighting for her. The city's dawn broke over the hospital where Marshall Kane lay, bandages wrapping his chest and arm, the knife wounds from Caleb's attack still raw. Ella sat at his bedside, her cross necklace glinting, her small hand clutching his, her backpack with Naya's journal and the USB safe beside her. The live-stream concert where Marshall exposed Black Crescent, confessed Ella's identity, and fought to save her had gone viral. Millions watching his bloodied stand against Caleb. The police, armed with the laptop's financials, Caleb's ledgers, and Naya's journal, had dismantled Black Crescent, arresting its leaders across the city. Caleb, unmasked as C, was in custody, his crescent moon tattoo a mark of his downfall. Marshall's leg throbbed from the van hit, but Ella's presence dulled the pain. "You scared me," she whispered, her voice steady despite tear-streaked cheeks. Marshall managed a grin, his chain catching the light. "Takes more than that to keep me down, kid." Dre, Ty, and Lena burst in. Dre's shoulder bandaged, Ty sporting a bruised jaw. "You're a legend." "Man," Lena said, tossing him a phone showing headlines. "Rap star exposes crime ring. Saves daughter." Father Paul and Sister Ruth followed, Paul holding Naya's journal. "You honored her," he said, his voice soft. Ella hugged him, then Ruth, her strength a beacon. Marshall sat up, wincing. "We're not done. Ella's mine, legal or not." Ruth nodded. "We'll help." Weeks later, the legal battle was swift. Naya's journal, the USB, and public support overturned Marshall's old termination papers. A judge granted him custody, Ella officially his daughter. Hope House cheered as Marshall signed the papers, Ella's cross necklace shining, her smile Nia's echo. But Marshall wanted more than victory, he wanted redemption. He planned a concert at Hope House, a free event to raise funds for foster kids, turning the church's courtyard into a stage. The city rallied, donations pouring in, the event live-streamed to millions. On concert night, Hope House glowed, strings of lights weaving through the courtyard. Kids from the foster home Mia, Jamal, and others bouncing with excitement. Marshall, healed but scarred, stood backstage, his chain replaced by a cross necklace matching Ella's. A gift from Ruth. Ella, in a new jacket, no longer the quiet girl, held a mic, her braids catching the breeze. "Ready?" "Dad," she asked, eyes bright. Marshall's heart swelled. "Always, kid." The crowd roared as they took the stage. Dre, Ty, and Lena joining, their crew unbreakable. Marshall gripped the mic, his voice booming. "This is for Nia, for Ella, for every kid who needs a home." He rapped, raw and real, weaving Naya's faith into lyrics. Ella swaying beside him. Then a twist, she stepped forward, her voice clear, singing a verse she'd written, a tribute to her mother. The crowd fell silent, then erupted, phones capturing the moment, live streams flooding with hearts. Mia and Jamal joined, slingshots swapped for glow sticks. Their courage from the docks, now joy. Backstage, Paul and Ruth watched, tears in their eyes. The concert raised millions. Hope House's future secure, scholarships set for its kids. But a shadow lingered. Marshall spotted a figure in the crowd, hooded, a crescent moon tattoo on his wrist. Not Caleb, but another Black Crescent remnant. The man nodded, tossing a note into the crowd, then vanished. Ella picked it up, her face tense. "You won this time. Live well." Nin. Marshall's pulse spiked Nia's initial, but not her hand. Someone had guided them. Maybe an ally of Nia's, maybe more. He tucked the note away, refusing to let fear steal the night. Ella grabbed his hand, pulling him back to the stage, her voice ringing as they finished the set together. Her verse now a duet. The crowd chanted their names, the city's lights a backdrop to their triumph. After, Marshall and Ella sat on Hope House's steps, the courtyard quiet, stars above. "You're my home now," Ella said, her cross necklace against his. Marshall hugged her, his scars a map of their fight. And you're mine. Kid, Dre, Ty, and Lena joined, planning a new album. Proceeds for foster homes. Paul handed Marshall a photo Naya, smiling, holding baby Ella. She's with you, he said. Marshall nodded, tucking it beside the note. The next day, Ella walked into Hope House's schoolroom, no longer the silent girl. Her friends cheering. Marshall watched, his cross heavy, vowing to be the father Nia believed he could be. The concert's funds rebuilt the foster home, its walls painted with murals of hope. Ella's verse became a hit, her voice on radio, a symbol of resilience. Marshall's next show was small, at a church. Ella by his side, their duet a prayer. The city's shadows held no more black crescent. Their empire dust. The tattooed stranger never reappeared. His note a final gift. Marshall and Ella moved into a modest house, photos of Naya on the walls, their bond unbreakable. As Ella slept, Marshall stood at her door, cross necklace in hand, whispering, "Thank you." Naya, the city's heart beat on, their family its rhythm, faith their light, from estrangement to family. Marshall and Ella defeat crime, honoring Naya. Thanks for watching. Like, share, subscribe, and hit the bell for new stories.